and Executive Director, Mansoor Institute for Strategic Studies, and Professor Swaran Singh, Center for International Studies. Thank you all of you for joining me. There are a lot of issues at hand. This is the Taliban too we are dealing with, and probably this breakthrough is very surprising for a lot of people because for 25 years we supported and helped Northern Alliance, but in diplomacy interests are permanent, not what you like or dislike. So opening comment for Professor Swaran Singh, what we witnessed today in Delhi is it a breakthrough, is it a reset, and has India done a different form of a diplomatic breakthrough where in particular decades where there was an overemphasis on the human rights issues?
Yes, I agree with you, Karthikeya. There's a clear difference between Taliban 1.0 and Taliban 2.0. Not just India, even Taliban has been very cautious, very pragmatic in making commentaries on India. And therefore, I think that pragmatism is what is underlining this, what I would call a groundbreaking initiative of inviting Motaki and also announcing that the technical mission is going to be upgraded into embassy, and at the same time announcing a whole range of developmental initiatives with specific details that India is going to revive and restart and rebuild, which is something which obviously has done a lot of cost calculations and thinking beforehand in this. What is different here is that Pakistan, which was originally the kind of creator of Taliban in 1990s, in Taliban 2.0 has major difficulties with Taliban. Border has been often seeing violence. We are just now talking of some blasts in even Kabul, whether they are air attacks. Of course, General Chaudhry of Pakistani military spokesperson has not denied or accepted any of this. But I think a clear pragmatic approach to see that India's not just relations with Taliban 2.0, but also overall India's regional diplomacy or strategic interests are pursued very carefully. In which case, engaging with the Taliban is very significant right now, particularly for various new things. Pakistan is looking at it as a zero-sum game. United States is wanting Bagram airport back. United States is closing India's opportunities in Chabahar, for example, by lifting the waiver on India's investments, on sanctions on India's investments in Chabahar. So multiple things have changed the reality today, but it's not just now. Last 4 years, both sides have shown enormous pragmatism. India was providing humanitarian assistance all these years. Now we want to institutionalize that, make it more predictable in terms of relationship. Taliban sees its advantage in opening up to the outside world, particularly starting trade with India, getting opportunities of consular services, of medical treatment in India, or medical institutions that India has already lined up, that India is going to start in Afghanistan, not just in Kabul, but various provinces. 20 ambulances are already being delivered to them. So it's a far more pragmatic approach to engaging with each other, driven by strategic interests of both sides.
Okay. Swaran Singh, do you think that Afghanistan is still a battleground for empires with, like Americans wanting a background? If you look at it, 3 empires got decimated in Afghanistan. The British, that ended up with the Treaty of Ganmark, 4,500 soldiers went, 12,000 followers, 2 survived, 1848. The Soviet Union, I mean to say, the way they crossed the bridge from Mazar-e-Sharif back into then their Union territories, very well encapsulated by the photographs of the retreat. And the Americans, I think that was the most rushed retreat. It reminded people of what happened in Vietnam, the Saigon, that famous helicopter photograph. It was similar to what happened in Saigon. So do you still think that Afghanistan is a battleground for empires today, sir?
2 things. One, you have beautifully brought out the historical examples of how none of the major powers in history have been able to really stay and control Afghanistan. That is partly because of its own terrain, its own sociological forces, clans, and so other things. But it's interesting to see that President Trump, who came to the second term with a clear message that he's not going to send boots on the ground anywhere, given the experience in Afghanistan particularly, Indeed, that can be said of all military operations of United States. Wherever U.S. forces have gone, they have come back after creating bigger chaos. But now to talk about Bagram, and I'm happy to see that Muttaqi has already responded in his press conference to this, that Afghan people will not accept any foreign forces on their soil, and therefore it's not going to happen. So United States will have to look at opportunities maybe in Pakistan in that sense. But here I think India, I do want to underline when it is taking a kind of initiative which we are calling groundbreaking, has its own risks. I mean, after all, Taliban is, still working on being very cohesive force even after 4 years. So Motaki's promises
That's a
are
very
being made
important point you
here.
have made, sir. Actually, that's a
So
very
in terms
important.
of
Yes.
so in terms of promises being made here are not only going to be, having challenges of putting them on the ground when he goes back, but also Afghanistan's Taliban 2.0's engagement with the regional players. For example, China and Pakistan have tried their best to keep India out. Of course, Russia has always made India part of the conversations on Afghanistan. And now this direct connect with the Taliban in that sense, I think, is making India a much more clear stakeholder and player in how future of Afghanistan by regional powers need to be sort of thought of and
I'll take your
organized.
assessment forward, sir. I'll take your assessment forward. Taliban, Americans, sir, I think Americans lost dinner. But coming back to India, Professor Swing, there is also one other aspect. Please put that in perspective. And I think this is very, very important. Muttaqi's visit to Deoband. Deoband is a very prominent Islamic school of jurisprudence like Barelvis. Allowing him to go there, and one of the, I remember more than 2 decades back when I went there, I was told that one of the gates of Deoband at the south was built by Zahir Shah. Entire gate was financed by that. And it marks the southern end of the boundary of the Deoband seminary. So please put that in historical perspective, why that is important and why is he being allowed to visit the seminary.
I think obviously the request of where he wants to go in exact 9 to
See,
16th of
Taj Mahal I
October.
can understand, sir. It's okay. Everyone wants to go and
Yes.
see Taj Mahal. But he's also going to Deoband, which is a very important, it's like Al-Azhar.
That is what I am underlining in terms of the risks that India also is taking in doing this groundbreaking kind of relationship with Taliban, because the kind of choices he's making during his visit here, and the press conference you mentioned, which did not allow women journalists
Yes.
to come. And in that sense, I think India definitely is taking risk. After 4 years, the most important thing Taliban is looking for is breaking away from isolation. None of the countries are recognizing it. Some of them are engaging it right now. And I can understand Nishanti's mentioning of they need more time. But their ideology fundamentally is not in tune with much of the world right now. So their policies on women's rights, on minorities' rights, press freedom, and so on could potentially become much more radicalized if the internal cohesion, which she says is gradually improving, does not really go very far, and tensions with Pakistan grow much worse. So therefore, definitely India is also taking a calculated risk in this of its reputation, for example, of taking a step forward and inviting him to come to New Delhi on a long 6 day visit here. So definitely, Taliban is reformed Taliban compared to 1990s. It's more pragmatic, but it's fundamentally
That's a
Sharia,
contested word, at least in the
which
Western press,
guides their
sir.
policies.
That's a contested word. Dr. D'Souza, is there something called reform Taliban? A lot of editorials have been written on that.
Well, I think I
Moderate
have a
Taliban.
differing view. I think